and welcome back to my channel. Today's a really interesting and exciting week because, as you might be aware, it is World Autism Awareness Week 2018. So I thought I would do a video, my own little awareness raising video, to try and really just get that understanding out there, really. So if you are autistic, you will know what autism is. But for those, and for people who work in autism will sort of know what it is. But for those who don't know, autism is a lifelong. This is the National Autistic Society, the leading autism charity in the UK. This is their how can I put it? Sorry, my mind's gone. Their brain fog. The National Autistic Society says that autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how a person communicates with and relates to other people and makes sense of the environment around them. So that's like a really very brief synopsis of what autism is. Obviously there's so much more to autism than that, but I'm not going to go into it now because you can read elsewhere about that. The main thing I think about autism is that it makes people with it. It makes autistic people find it hard to access the invisible Wi-Fi or invisible wireless that makes social interaction comfortable and intuitive for non-autistics. And this difficulty of accessing this invisible wireless can be manifested in very, very different ways. Autism is not one condition. That is, if you like, the key message I really want to get out there. Autism is not one condition. Autism is really varied. It's an array of very different but related ways of experiencing this difficulty accessing the invisible wireless, this difficulty in really understanding and making sense of the world around you, especially the social world. But this difficulty, it's an inner experience of disconnection with the surroundings and with other people that can result in a lot of confusion, anxiety and isolation. However, it's not always visible in actual behaviour. It is not always possible to detect autism based upon, an encounter with someone who has it. It's far more complex than that. So for example, there are many stereotypes about autism out there. You might well be aware of some of them. What the question is, you need to ask yourself really, is what image do you have of autism? What do you think autism is? When I say autism, what comes into your mind? Because the likelihood is that you're going to have some image in your head, some preconception of what you think autism is. And that preconception, it might come, say, from someone with autism you've met. So, you might then think, oh, I've met someone with autism, this is what autism is. The problem with that, of course, is that is just one person with autism. When you've met one person with autism, you've quite literally only met one person with autism. And that person's version of autism is just one version of autism. So as I say, or you might possibly get your preconception of what you think autism is, say, from the media, from watching a film. A case in point would be the classic film Rain Man, that most people have heard of. And if you might be forgiven maybe for watching that film and then thinking that, oh, that's what autism is. They can count if toothpicks fall on the floor, for example. They can count them like really quickly, or have some like special skill or something. So that might be your idea of what you think autism is. But as I say, this is just one potential version of what autism is. The problem is that the media, over and over and over again, tends to repeat the same story. And the problem is, if you repeat the same story often enough, that's how stereotypes get formed. And stereotypes are not wrong. Stereotypes always contain truth within them. So there will be people with autism out there who are like the ones you see on TV. That is a type of autism. So you're going to see people like that. But it's incomplete because there are many, many, many different types of autism out there that won't fit into your preconceived image of what autism is. But these different types of autism, they're no less autism than the autism you think you know. Each one of them is a valid type of autism. So it's about keeping an open mind, listening, asking questions, and not assuming anything. There's one stereotype that I don't know how this one gets circulated, but sometimes people think you can't be autistic if you can speak well. Well, yes, actually you can. I'm a case in point. It is true that, there are many autistic people out there who do struggle with speech, and some autistic people can't speak at all. But as I said, autism is broad. And some people with autism, like myself, can't stop talking. We can't shut up. So that's another type of autism. It's still autism. So just because someone can talk well and engage in a conversation, they can still very much be autistic. The likelihood is the person will be using their intellect to work out what comes naturally to most people, because we can't intuitively access that invisible Wi-Fi, that invisible kind of connectivity that non-autistic people can access, and that is is like a social glue, if you like, that holds people together so that people can understand body language, work out what another person is thinking or feeling, and form relationships and connections with other people. That's really difficult for an autistic person. Many of us, we just find that so difficult. And this is part of the reason why it's so hard for us to, form those relationships. Not to say we can't have relationships, we can. It's just that it takes us it's a lot harder for us to do that. It can take us a lot of energy and a lot of effort because it isn't always apparent to the naked eye. You can't always detect this just by talking to someone with autism. They might appear as though, they don't have any difficulty because they might be talking to you, they might be looking you in the eye, they might be doing all of this social stuff that they've spent a lot of time learning that most people do naturally. So do listen, do ask questions, do not assume that a person doesn't have any difficulties just because they are conducting themselves in an acceptable fashion, if you like. That's really important. It bears repeating again and again. Do not make assumptions based on behaviour. Anyone in the street could be autistic. Any person you walk past in the street or in a shop might be autistic. You can't always tell just by looking at a person. They might be really well dressed. They might be wearing makeup. They might look just like any other person. You can't always tell. And that is no indicator whatsoever of how severely their autism might affect them. So do ask questions. Do listen to the person. Just trying to get everything here. Keeping an open mind. Differences are not always legible. It's very often an invisible difference. You can't always tell someone's got autism straight away or based on their external behaviour. But the other, just to reiterate really, autism is a processing difference, the environment is processed differently. This is very much an inner experience. Behaviours that we might show, such as say, we might rock. I do this now and again. I do often rock, for example. Often because that helps me, say, interpret information better, particularly if I'm needing to concentrate on something. But when I'm in public, I try and repress this unless I'm not comfortable with the person. Some autistic people, not all autistic people, repress their behaviours, and some are more likely to externalise it. But the media does tend to latch on to this more obvious behaviour, I guess, because it's more tangible and concrete, and people tend to prefer things that are a bit more obvious than concrete. I guess it's just sort of human nature. But these behaviours like rocking or all those things that people associate with autism, these are just coping strategies. They're not actually symptoms of autism, because autism is an inner experience. It's a processing difference, how we interpret the world around us. So the coping mechanisms that you then are really, like I say, walking and things like that, they're coping mechanisms, and they may or may not be displayed at any given time. So you shouldn't base your opinion as to how autistic someone is based upon whether or not, to what extent they walk or whatever, because that isn't actually a reliable indicator as to how severely autism affects a person, because they're just coping strategies. Very good coping strategies, actually, and autistic people should feel able to do those without feeling judged. Yeah. So the other thing, though, autism does carry a lot of difficulties. You know, we do struggle. We have a lot of difficulties that aren't always apparent. But also, finally, I really want to get across that autism is not a tragedy. It's not an unyielding negative. There are a lot of struggles associated with having autism, and they must not be overlooked. And we do need to talk about those struggles and understand them, so that people can accept this different way of being. But there are positive stories about living with autism as well. So don't pity us. There's nothing wrong with being autistic. As Jim Sinclair said, the famous self-advocate, don't mourn for us. Our lives are varied and complex, a bit like yin and yang, negatives and positives. Autism is not an unyielding negative. It is a rainbow of variety, a rainbow of complexity. And it can contain a lot of positivity. There are many positive stories out there of people with autism going about their lives and finding a lot of meaning and enjoyment in their lives. I'm quite a happy person generally. I have a lot of difficulties, but I'm happy. Generally I'm a happy person. So, like I say, autism is not all a doom story, so please don't pity us, because that is really patronising. Just listen is the main thing. Listen, and do not form assumptions based upon what you might hear or see in the media, or based upon an autistic person you might know, because we're all different. That's the message I want to get across on World Autism Awareness Week. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you.